to have flown 3 types of carrier-borne aircraft. I mean, there's nobody else in India who's had this privilege. It's truly an honor, sir.
Thank you very much.
He's flown Seahawks, he's flown the Sea Harrier, and finally the MiG-29K. There's nobody who knows more about carrier aviation than Admiral Shekhar Sinha. I've known him for a very long time, commissioned after the war again, like Admiral Anup Singh, 1974, has held a string of distinguished appointments and was finally the Western CNC West. And before that, where I first heard of him was when he was Chief of the Integrated Defense Staff at HQ IDS. And he's been one of the most foremost proponents of jointmanship. I've heard of the debates that he's had with the other services where he's spoken about joint service planning and jointmanship 10 years back, even before it was fashionable as it is today. So please welcome Admiral Shekhar Sinha. So straight off the bat, we were talking about 1971 with Admiral Anup Singh. We were looking back in the rearview mirror. But since the topic of the seminar is about looking back and looking ahead, what are the lessons that you would draw from the 1971 war to 2021, almost a half century later? How has it shaped your thinking, given the new threats that we are facing now? A range of new different geopolitical threats, new actors on the scene, old actors fading away. How do you see the maritime scenario shaping up?
Well, thank you for getting me here, Sandeep. Before I forget, just I want to say that Sandeep recalls that he met me the first time when I was at the IDS headquarters. But I have known him from the time he was a very young boy, and Dad was posted in Goa as the direction officer controlling all our fighter aircraft. So that goes back to many, many years ago, which Sandeep may not recall. So thank you once again. Just coming back to where you started from, Admiral Anup Singh is the historian of the Navy, and in the contemporary Navy, nobody knows more about history than him. So you had the history himself speaking here. One point I want to add is it did expedite the surrender of the Pakistani army at the time of war. One of the contributing reasons was that the blockade was so complete in the East Pakistan ports, it left no option for logistic support from outside to give the fuel, so-called fuel to fire. But also it prevented the Pakistani army to flee away from Bangladesh, and that's left with no option but to surrender. So that is one point just I wanted to make. And it will happen so, but no two wars are alike. And therefore, I suspect that the new war, whenever that happens, it may not be same as what is happening now. As you rightly said, the geopolitics has changed. Now, what has changed from, last 50 years, of which nearly 40 years, one has been in the Navy, and both Anup Singh and I had the privilege of commanding the INS Delhi a little later and taking over the Western Fleet from him. So our sense is that because of the geopolitical nature of warfare today, the big wars, big battles at sea, it is best avoided. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be prepared.
By the big battle, you mean the Mahanian battle?
The Mahanian battles, or even or fleets hitting each other. That's likely to be not likely to take place, for a simple reason that there are more people who are using the sea, and sea is meant for global commons. Let's not forget the Navy's primary aim is to protect the sea lanes of communication, and that's what the Navy will do. But it will also not permit any other Navy or Air Force or Army to hinder the freedom of movement of the Indian cargo or trade, no matter where it is. In 2013, the then chief, he made a statement when he was asked, I think you only asked him the question in the Navy Day briefing, that will the Indian Navy go to off Vietnam to protect
into the South China Sea?
Into the South China Sea. Yes. I don't know. I think you were the one who asked the question. Yes. I don't recall now. And he gave a very good answer. He says, wherever India's economic interests are, Indian Navy will go there to protect it. And I think that should be at the bottom line of our deployment. But what has happened is now we are not having sort of one adversary. We have now nexus between Pakistan and China. I can say that very openly. And even if the Chinese fleet is in the Indian Ocean, it emboldens the Pakistani fleets to do something which they would not have done all by themselves. If you see the number of ships and submarines that the Pakistanis are adding because of China, and all of them pointing towards us, including on the land borders, that leaves no doubt that how the war is going to take place. Now the geopolitics is right now, as you know, it's revolving around the Indo-Pacific, though some steam of Indo-Pacific has been taken out by what has happened in Afghanistan. And that seems to be, compelling me to say that possibly China's attention is going to be more on the continental war or continental sort of indulgence and less on the South China Sea. And therefore you find that AUKUS has come into being, therefore you find the American aircraft carriers are more active. You just saw the UUV hitting one of the carriers. So the war is not going to be a big one, but it will make news. And that is how the low intensity conflicts are. It will happen at sea, it will happen over land, probably you'll have these airborne incursions. And that makes it more difficult to decide about your deployment. Where is going to happen? The theater is not only on the northern borders. Right. Now the theater is entire Indian Ocean and the areas from where the Indian trade is moving. So I think this is one big change which has taken place from 71 to now.
We have a disputed land border with Pakistan, over 700 kilometers. We have 3,448 with China. But we have no maritime boundary disputes with China. In that, in this condition, how do you see a maritime confrontation playing out between India and China at sea?
Again, it goes back to the geopolitics issue that you started in the beginning. China's influence on the India's maritime neighbors is well known to everybody. In fact, we have very few friends. But I would think that how it will play out is that the Chinese, if the pressure on the land border is high, it will also try and shall I say this, seduce the Indian maritime theater, and it might just start sending few ships to berth in maybe in Sri Lanka, maybe in Gwadar, maybe in other parts of the sea, Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean was free. It was basically quite a zone of peace, if you like. Right. Indian Navy had complete domination of movement, but that is not so. And therefore, we do not know as to what intention will the Chinese Navy have by being present in the Indian Ocean, except to message that it is not only the land border where we can put pressure, but it is also the maritime that we can interdict your trade. So that could be one of the intentions that I can see. And that is where the Indian Navy will come into being.
So you're saying that the role that the United States did in support of Pakistan in 1971, that Admiral Anup Singh mentioned, the Enterprise incident, is something that China would do now in support of Pakistan, say in a future?
Very much, absolutely no doubts. Because right now, the Pakistanis don't have the ability, but once in a while they will show you that, what is called the SLBMs being fired, submarine launched ballistic missile. Though it is not true that their submarines have this. It was only a trial platform of China which was towed into Pakistan, and they have fired this. We are aware of this. But certainly the Chinese intention will be to pressurize you by their presence. Navies are really, my sense is that it is a force in being. And till you declare a nation belligerent, like Admiral Anup Singh was talking about, that we enforced blockade and then we withdrew it because the country was not very keen to declare a war, which it was later on, it was declared war. So once you declare a war and identify the belligerent countries, then you can go whole hog for the naval warfare. Because let's not forget that in the Navy, there are no black and white. There are only 10% sort of warships. 90% are the global commons who are using it for trade, which is not the case on land border or in the aerial combat. So we have to be very careful as to who we attack. We have to identify, and therefore the maritime domain awareness comes into picture.
Which you have heavily invested.
Very, very invested, and I think it's very robust and it's becoming robust by the
Could you
day.
tell our audience a bit more about MDA, because
Yeah.
not many people are aware of it.
You know, the naval warfare largely depends on the knowing the position of the ships and submarines. Ocean is a very huge area. And fortunately for us, the ships and submarines, they don't travel like an aircraft. They take a lot of time. And therefore, it is mandatory for the Navy to know who's where. And then who is a sort of, shall I say, shadow worthy or attack worthy. And that is being done right now we have the Indian Ocean Fusion Center here in Gurgaon, not very far. And they are repeated in all our command headquarters, in the Western Command Headquarters, in the Maritime Operations Center, and they can be, shall I say, they're online. And there are ships and submarines who are operating at 7 important points, of which there are 4 choke points, from where they keep giving this information. Now we have a satellite through which the data can be transferred, and it is online. And we know exactly as to how many merchant ships are moving, so that we don't make them a target should the belligerents or belligerent country be identified and the war comes out. It is necessary to know in peacetime.
So this is the capability you did not have in 1971.
We didn't have this.
So in 71, you had gone into the war completely blind.
But not really, Sandeep. It wasn't blind. But we knew only by messages which used to come through the ships,
Right.
or our intelligence, or maybe the Indian flagged merchant ships. It is also their duty to tell us about at least the movements of merchant ship.
So right now with MDA, you have a 24/7 picture that you switch on and you get a position of every single ship at sea.
Every single merchant ship, because we have this white shipping data exchange sort of agreements with nearly 20, I think 28 was the last that I heard, maybe more. I may not be very correct. Some naval officers here who are here, they may be able to say that. But what it does is, those countries, every time a merchant ship leaves their harbor or arrives at the harbor, that data is sent into this domain. And these officers are also posted, officers from these countries are posted. But now with the 2+2 arrangement going on with some countries and intelligence sharing, it is quite possible that some grey shipping, maybe some black shipping data could be made available. Whether it is on right now, I wouldn't be able to say, but it will happen because of the Quad, because of Malabar, because of other agreements. And I think that's going to make a lot of difference.
So in times of war, you know exactly what ship is a possible hostile contact.
Absolutely.
It clears the battle space.
Absolutely. The point is that, you have to, the command at sea is got a very difficult task. You have to find out as to what was the intent of the commanding officer or what was the intent of the commander. And that's very difficult to say sitting in, let's say, Delhi operations room or in Bombay. And therefore, the fleet commander, who is the man at sea, or the commanding officer, if he is detached, is very important for them to take a call as to is he belligerent, is he hostile, and is he going to do something which is going to sort of impact our safety, our own safety of our own ship.
Right.
And then you are fully entitled to engage him in a battle.
Admiral Singh mentioned this point about missile boats being towed. They didn't have the range to hit Karachi. They were towed, they attacked, and they came back. Now there's this underlying thread of naval ingenuity, that the Navy did not wait for getting the perfect naval force or the resources or indeed the equipment. And they made do with whatever they had, like the Vikrant, for instance. You've been on the Vikrant. The Vikrant did not, it had a crack on its boiler, and they had to weld the crack, and they deployed it in a different theater so that the submarines would not be able to track her. You had, of course, this classic case of naval commandos being trained without us having a special forces, naval special forces equivalent. How do you think these, I wouldn't like to call it jugaad as much as improvisation. Does this spirit of improvisation still exist in the Indian Navy of today? When you're looking at new threats, new adversaries, which are much bigger than you in terms of numbers, is this the underlying principle still?
Very much, Sandeep. You know, the innovation is name of the game, actually speaking. And every ship, every command, every fleet, they are always sort of simulating as to what happens if so and so thing happens. And most of the time, these simulations take into account what we cannot do, what is visible on surface. And therefore, you prepare for the worst. And there are many things which going on, which happen all the time, which is not in the realm of the standard naval operations, if you like. We have grown. We have got a very large Marine Commando force now, almost a battalion level. Then we have missiles which, you know, sort of outrange most of the ports in Pakistan and maybe further. Now we have missiles, you know, which can hit in the heartland of Beijing. So those fears are not there. Those compulsions are not there. But now the decision making as to when to do it, that will become difficult because of the geopolitics. Because you know, you have how much of input will you get from intelligence of, let's say, from Quad countries or from 2+2? How much impact? Ultimately, a war must make impact on the land warfare. It's always the case. Navies will fight a war, or navies will do something which will pressurize the belligerent country to go soft or not take any action on the land border, which is actually challenging our territorial integrity. So that must be kept in mind. And as Admiral Anup Singh was saying, that trade warfare is extremely important because you know, there is a chain of these merchant ships, particularly carrying oil. As you know that Chinese import 80% of oil from outside and 65% from the Gulf. And they are like a chain, you know, they keep going in a row.
It's like a pipeline.
It's a pipeline. Right. And at the ports where the refineries are there, they have to be offloaded, it has to be refined, it goes into action. And there is a time frame that every third day or every fourth day or every alternate day, these ships must reach there. Otherwise, it does not meet the deal-to-deal requirement in that country, especially China. So the Chinese have this fear, you know, this Malacca dilemma is not going to go away. In fact, now I say it is not a Malacca dilemma, now it is an Indian Ocean dilemma for Chinese. Right. Malacca dilemma
because of the new
geopolitics.
Geopolitics. The others that have come.
It's an Indian Ocean dilemma for the Chinese. It's not Malacca dilemma anymore. It was Malacca dilemma at one time. Partially Chinese have tried to get over it, but our assessment is that till about 2050, about 53-54% of the Chinese oil will still travel through Indian Ocean.
Right. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Admiral Sinha, for this fascinating overview again, for actually moving us forward in time from 50 years, how the lessons of 1971 continue to shape our thinking. And indeed, the Indian Navy continues to think out of the box, think innovatively, think differently, and look at the big picture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you so much.